Welcome to the Stetzer ChurchLeaders Podcast. Conversations with today's top ministry leaders to help you lead better every day. And now, here are your hosts, Ed Stetzer and Daniel Yang.
Welcome to the Stetzer ChurchLeaders Podcast, where we're helping Christian leaders navigate and lead through the cultural issues of our day. My name's Daniel Yang, National Director of Churches of Welcome at World Relief, and today we're talking with Eric Geiger. Eric's the senior pastor of Mariners Church in Irvine, California. He's authored or co-authored several books, including Designed to Lead, The Church and Leadership Development, and the best-selling church leadership book, Simple Church, Returning to God's Process for Making Disciples. Be sure to keep an eye out for his course, Designed to Lead, which will be on rightnowpastorsplus.org. Eric's also the host of the Eric Geiger Leadership Podcast, which is a part of the ChurchLeaders Podcast Network. Be sure to check it out at ChurchLeaders.com/podcast network. And now let's go to Ed Stetzer, Editor-in-Chief of Outreach Magazine and the Dean of the Talbot School of Theology.
Okay, Eric, I'm just full disclosure, this is like my home church is Mariners Church, and I'm on staff here. What am I? The scholar in residence and teaching pastor, motivational speaker.
I like scholar in residence better.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Okay, so we just had our, what do you call it, the pastor's retreat?
Yes.
Like we did pastor's retreat, and I
think this year we might have called it pastor's gathering, just because we didn't go out of town.
Right, that's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah.
And so I posted on the socials. You know, the kids are on the socials. I posted this 2025.
You've been on the socials for a long time.
I've been on the socials. Remember Lightway, we did all that stuff
Dude,
together?
you
and I know each other a long time.
You were so early on the socials.
I know,
man.
it's crazy.
When Twitter, now Twitter's really angry, but back when Twitter was happy people.
I loved it. Joe Thorne and Steve McCoy got me on Twitter. You remember Chris Martin used to work for us at Lifeway?
Dude, you were on Twitter way before me.
2007, baby. 2007.
I wasn't on Twitter till like 12?
I don't even remember. All right, that would stay with me.
Okay,
so anyway,
sorry.
but I did post this teaching plan. So again, people are listening by the podcast, they can't see that in my hand. I have, maybe a 30, 40-page document, a spiral-bound notebook that says 2025 teaching plan.
Yes.
And I posted it on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and everybody commented, can I see that? What does he do? What is this like? And I thought we'd talk some about strategic planning. I want to get there eventually. I want to go through a little bit about mission, vision, values, things of that sort. Because I've been pretty transparent in places before that I think you are the best leader I've ever led with. We've known each other, 20 years?
20, yeah.
This is the third place we've worked together, Christ Fellowship Miami, Lifeway, and now Mariners Church. And so, when I teach leadership, I reference you, and because I use you as an example in some of these things. We're going to talk some about Designed to Lead. I'm actually the general editor of this curriculum called Right Now Pastors Plus. You do your course there. It's not out. Well, depending on when people listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
But you can go to rightnowpastorsplus.org, enter in your name. Your course will be out as part of that. I have a course in that on breaking barriers. Anyway, so when I talk about leadership, strategic planning, and more, I think of you as a good example and model that. I've seen you do it, and that's part of why I'm on the team at Mariners Church. But let's start talking, go back a little bit further, because a couple of concerns. Okay, Mariners Church is a big church. It's a monstrously big church. I think some people could tune out of our conversation early on, so I want to say we're going to talk about things that are appropriate for a church of 75 and 200 and more. These are not specific to large churches, because you've done them in different churches of different sizes. So let's even start with, so how do you try to have a clarity of vision, mission, values in a church that could be applicable? Because our audience is pastors and church leaders of all different kinds of size churches. Where does it begin? Tell me about that.
And so you mentioned that we'll talk about the teaching plan. So the question you're asking is broad.
Is kind of further back.
Broader than
because this is the strategic plan that you laid out for the year. Kind of flows out of the vision, values, and mission.
And I would say this is a strategic plan for utilizing the teaching wisely.
Right.
But then, I agree that you want to go broader.
Yeah, and I have a thing where I want to talk about cycles of strategic planning, preaching, leadership development, next-gen development.
Yes.
So we're going to get to all of that. But I want you to go back to the very beginning. You brought great vision clarity to everywhere you've been. I saw you do it at Lifeway.
Yeah.
I saw you do it at Mariners Church. I saw it from a distance. But at Lifeway, I saw you bring vision clarity.
Right.
Talk about that.
I love it. I think clarity is a gift. Clarity is a gift to the people that you serve. It's a gift to the people that you serve alongside. Because if you don't offer clarity, there's so much time that is wasted on asking some of the same questions over and over again. And I'm not against discussion, but at some point you want to offer, here's our conclusion on these important matters, so that we can execute so that we can shepherd.
We've made some decisions.
Yes,
rather than the paralysis of constantly we're unsure about these things.
Right, and just rehashing over and over again. I mean, just a small example that I think will make sense to pastors and church leaders. If you don't know what you're going to do when somebody becomes a Christian at your church, if you don't know how you're going to follow up on the person, what you're going to invite them to next, whether it's a new Christians class or a one-on-one mentoring relationship or whatever it is for you, if you don't have that clarity on that, then when you give a call to people to respond to the gospel, to repent, and whether they fill out a card or walk forward or go to a prayer room, if you don't know what you're going to do, every time you are rehashing, what do we do?
Right.
And then when you do that, there's time wasted and lost instead of following up on the person. So having clarity on, I say that's a small thing, but that's a really big issue.
Right.
How we're going to care for someone when they become a Christian. Having clarity on that then frees people up to here's how we actually shepherd those people. And then you obviously watch the process, you nurse the process, you shepherd the process so that you can shepherd the people. So that's just one example.
And
now,
that would be like at a strategic plan level.
I'd say that's an operational or execution or or shepherding issue. Right. So to go, as the language you use, which I think is wise, to go further back, I would go back to the macro view of the church as a whole. So how are we going to make disciples? We know that we're to make disciples. Well, let's talk about what we believe, our doctrinal positions, that those need clarity. So here at Mariners, we went through a several year process of writing position papers on key cultural issues of the day, but also doctrinal positions like on spiritual gifts, because we need to know if we're going to scale to reach more and more people, our leaders need to be on the same page on what we believe. Right. So there's clarity about beliefs. Then there's clarity about values. That is, here's what's important here. Here's how we live around here.
Here's what is important here.
Here's what's important. Here's our values. This is what matters to us. That's different from your beliefs. I would say your belief on gender is not the same as we value the exposition of God's word, or we value serving the local community as Jesus has served us.
So one's a theological position, another is a value that you seek to actualize.
Agreed. One's a belief is a doctrinal position, and then values are, it's you could say it's the soft skills of here's how we live around here. Right. Now some people debate on if your staff values should be different from your church values. We actually have them as the same.
You have them same.
We're the same. So we have a set of values, and then clarity on mission. Here's what we are on the planet to do. Right. So values is how we do it. Mission is here's what we do. Then there's clarity on strategy, which is here's how we execute the mission. So, mission, values, strategy are all really big. And I think you have to be careful you don't confuse them. So some would say, hey, we have a mission. It's to know him and make him known.
Right. Very common mission statement.
And I think it's a beautiful statement, but it's a bad mission statement.
What is Mariners' mission statement?
Inspire people to follow Jesus and fearlessly change the world. The reason I'd say know and make him known is you never know. Actually, maybe it's a fine mission statement. It's a bad vision statement.
Okay.
So, and I'll talk about vision in a moment because you never know if it's accomplished.
Right. Okay.
You never know if it's done.
Right.
Vision is more short term. Okay. And you want to know that you've accomplished. So right now we have a vision to launch 2 new congregations in the next 6 months. Well, we'll know 6 months from now if we've
Sure. That's the vision.
Yeah, and we're able to rally people around. So we view vision as a short term, something we're running at together as a team. But that vision is informed by our mission, inspire people to follow Jesus and fearlessly change the world, our values, and then our strategy. And so our strategy, a long time ago I wrote Simple Church. That's essentially a macro view of how you make disciples, having a strategy for making disciples. How does all your programs, from weekend worship service to small groups or Sunday school classes to volunteer opportunities, how do you pull all of those together so you can actually see disciples made at your church.
Okay. So I want to get down to the strategy. So, and that's because I think part of the strategic plan is the teaching plan. That's a part of that.
That'd be a sub strategy under that for us.
And I think people want to. I mean, it was just fascinating how people were responding, because I don't think pastors naturally think this way normally. Some do, but most don't. Okay. So we talked about the mission. And we would also say, too, that there are whole books of written people saying this is how vision should be and this is how mission should be. And we're describing it and defining it in a way that works in this context. And
those words get thrown around. If you want to use them differently, that's great. Let me just define how I'm using them.
Please.
So we have the doctrine.
Yep.
That's about beliefs.
Yep.
I think that's probably something that us church leaders care about, but maybe, and we should. And an organization doesn't think about it separately.
Okay.
But we think about beliefs or doctrine, right? Then there's mission. Here's what your church is to do. Mm-hmm. Values, how you do it.
Yep.
How you live, and strategy. Here's how we're organized to accomplish the mission. So think about a football coach who says, hey, our mission is to win games. Great. But how are we going to win games?
Right.
So if a church says, hey, we're going to make disciples, awesome. That should be the mission of the church. In fact, Jesus gave us the mission.
Yeah.
So we don't want to. We want to use his. We want to go with what he.
We
goes
might
with.
put some fancy more language around it, fearlessly, whatever it may be.
But it's ultimately about making disciples.
Okay.
But if we don't give a strategy on how we make disciples, then we're like the football coach who says, let's win, but never draws up plays.
Right.
So we need to draw up some plays that we've tested that we believe.
Okay, you're getting strategy, and I want you to get strategy, but values. So, because a couple things that right now we're in the process of redrawing our values at the Talbot School of Theology.
Great.
Just because it's good to do that every once in a while. It's not just because I'm the new leader. Everyone sort of said we need a new set of values that reflects our commitment to the church. It reflects our, our theological space as as this thriving evangelical school, whatever. Okay. So you have values here.
We have 8 values.
8 values. Would you mind telling us a few of them? Maybe 8 might be too long, but give us a couple of them.
Yeah. The first one is the word must be central. Okay. Another is think big, act small. Okay. Love others as Jesus loved us. Intentional environments inspire courageous decisions. The story of Jesus creates storytellers.
Okay. So with that, the big part I want to talk about, the story of Jesus creates storytellers. That's one of my favorite ones. When I come to staff meeting, all staff or pastor staff, you actually, and I do this, we did it last year, and then we're doing it more this year. You give out awards because what you celebrate, you cultivate. So talk to us about how you do that. So the award of the last one you just gave about the story.
Yeah. So each we have all staff worship and meeting once a month, and every month we recognize a person for each value. Yeah. And so the person who gets the award for the story of Jesus creates storytellers is someone who's inspiring people to share the gospel or is helping people tell the story of transformation that Jesus has done in their life. So it's just recognizing the value of storytelling. And when we say storytelling, we're not only referring to like a cool video, but helping people tell the story of Jesus in their life,
And then, again, what you celebrate, you become. So, like, one of ours is, we haven't finalized the wording, so I don't know what the wording's quite going to be, but, connected with the global church might be some variant of it. So we'll give an award to one of our faculty who has helped us connect with a global partner with a global church. Awesome. So those values.
I think when you celebrate that, so, if it becomes... the world is on our heart, or we're committed to the globe. Whatever the language is. More important, so many leaders get caught up on the language. Yeah. I think the language should be sticky.
Yeah. But by sticky, you mean something easy to remember and easy to replicate.
But so many leaders, they stop there on value integration.
Right.
And the sticky language, you're not hearing me say it's not important. Make it as sticky. But more important is that you would celebrate it, that you would hold people accountable.
I have consulted, I don't do this much anymore. I've consulted with hundreds of churches over the years, help them develop values, and I would say 1 out of 10 actually have an ongoing plan to implement those values and to celebrate those values so that they replicate those values.
Right. So very typical, not just in churches, but organizations as well. They pay a consultant. Yeah. They come in, they identify values, they put them in a slick brochure or put them on a website.
Put them on a poster.
And then it gets buried in a file somewhere. Right. You want John Cotter said values are really, here's how we live around here. Values are, or he said culture is the shared values that drive the organization. It's the shared values beneath the surface.
Right.
So if you want values to actually drive behavior, you've got to teach them.
Yep.
You got to celebrate them. You have to. They should be in your annual review process.
Right. And so, in what I've seen, of course, with you, it's all those things, but also the celebration in the monthly staff meeting.
Yeah.
So everybody knows the values, and they continue to be before people, and that makes a distinction.
So
people
you
get that.
Yeah. So your faculty member who takes some extra time and connects with a student in Korea or a cohort of students who are studying theology in Korea, and you brag on that faculty member in front of everybody. You then in that moment are showing this is really important to us. How we treat the global church is really significant.
You're giving away some things there, but I haven't announced yet. But just good. But Korea is a great hypothetical example. I just kind of
made it up as a
hypothetical example. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then mission, and then we talked about values, and then you start talking about some of the strategy. So when you kind of what are some key components for church strategic planning?
Okay, when it comes to strategy, I think flock and sheep.
Flock and sheep.
And I'm speaking to a local church leader, right? So flock is your macro strategy. It's like your programming. And then sheep is what happens to that new Christian? What happens to the new guest? What happens to a first-time giver? So we watch our flock strategy. Here at Mariners, we call it the transformational loop. And so it's based on our mission, because mission and strategy have to
And where was the first place you published the transformational loop? Do you remember? Lifeway? Didn't we do that there?
Actually, this transformational loop was, everyone uses the word transformation.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's true. So it's not the same thing we talk about transformational groups or some of that other stuff.
The transformational loop
right here live on our conversation. Okay. So tell me about transformational loops. Because I've seen you talk about it here at Mariners.
Yeah. So transformational loop at Mariners is actually my predecessor, Kenton. We've
Ken
updated.
Shore was the former pastor.
He put the transformational loop in place, and
that's why we can't say that we did it at Lifeway.
No, because Ken did it, but he did it after reading Simple Church.
Oh, okay, nice.
So
okay,
it's so funny. So I wasn't here yet, but I feel like I was a part of the transformational loop. So what I love about our transformational loop, and I give Kenton credit on this, is it is connected to our mission. So our mission is inspire people to follow Jesus.
And was that under Kenton, that mission as well? So you didn't change that?
Didn't change the
mission. Values you did change.
I did change the values.
Right.
And even Kenton told me, man, at some point you need to make these your own.
Well, that's what, like when I came to Talbot, they're like, we got to update these values. And
I think you have to be.
Oh, wait a second. I'm trying to remember the mission updated, and then the values sort of flow out of that for us. Yeah.
So, of all those words I'm using, I think mission and values have to be handled more carefully when you change than strategy.
The strategy is a little more nimble.
You should change strategy more frequently. Mission and values, you're tweaking with DNA.
Yeah.
And so
I agree. Very important.
You want to do that really wisely.
And probably slowly if you're a pastor or church leader.
Yes, and also especially on values, Jim Collins said that what you're wanting to do is uncover what's already there, as opposed to just go to some church website and copy and paste, because you're basically then trying to be some other culture that you're not.
Right.
So when you have values, it's fine to have some aspirational values.
Right.
We want to be this,
but
really the most of your values should be actual values.
So we actually did listening groups with our faculty.
Great.
And then we actually these are actual values, and there are a couple of aspiration values we're going to work towards, but they have emerged, still emerging. That's why I haven't given you the language.
No, that's beautiful. Yeah. And so obviously there's things you don't want to celebrate.
Yeah.
Every culture has
organizational dysfunction is one of our key values.
But you raise up the things that are great.
Right. Celebrate. Yeah. You want to move forward with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are our values. But when it comes to strategy, our mission is inspire people to follow Jesus and fearlessly change the world. You want your strategy to be deeply connected to your mission. Right. Otherwise, you're executing something that's not connected to your mission.
Right.
So inspire people to follow Jesus. Our loop is follow Jesus, grow together, serve one another, change the world.
Right.
So our loop begins and ends with our mission.
Okay.
Follow Jesus, we use our weekend services.
Right.
Grow together, we use Rooted and life groups.
Rooted is a experience
discipleship course,
10 weeks, right? I've been through it, part of coming into Mariners. I did that because of being a Mariners.
And then serve one another is volunteer opportunities, and change the world is what we do in our cities.
The broader mission.
Local outreach, global outreach.
Yeah, okay.
So it's outreach.
So just say the transformation loop one more time.
Yeah. Follow Jesus, grow together, serve one another, change the world.
Okay, so that then is an actualization of your mission and your values. But that
I'd say of your mission, not of the values.
Okay, fair enough.
But
That's
the values,
true. How you do it is
the values should impact everything.
Good.
We do.
Okay, super.
Yeah.
So then that's where some of the, you mentioned like follow Jesus might be related to weekend services. So that's where some of the strategic planning comes in, right?
Yes.
Okay. So where then?
And I would say that's the flock strategy.
That's the flock strategy. Okay.
And then the sheep strategy is, what are we doing for the new guest, for the person who became a Christian? And when I want the freedom to constantly tweak those strategies and add to,
Right.
So I had a conversation with a reporter at a that I think our church will end up in, the global magazine that everyone will know, but since it's not published yet, I won't mention it. And he said, well, don't people just get lost in a church that size? Not a person of the Christian faith, but doesn't a person get, just asking questions.
Yeah.
They're doing a thing on mega churches.
Right.
And I said, well, no, every person is sort of nudged towards.
Yes.
Intentionally, sometimes overwhelmingly, towards something called Rooted. So I kind of explained it, and he asked some follow-up questions. Okay, now we're a large church, so Rooted could be hundreds, thousands of people come to a Rooted on a given time. But every church, a church of 100, should have a strategy of what happens next when someone shows up at the church, right?
I would say a small church that doesn't have a strategy for what happens can feel big.
Yeah. Doesn't have a strategy will feel big.
And a big church, if they have strategies for how they care for people, can feel small.
Oh, I get it. Okay, right. Makes sense.
I want the church to feel small.
Right.
For as small as the person wants it to be.
Right.
One of the advantages of a church that is large or a church our size is people, and it's like your own personal life. Your greatest strengths are your greatest weaknesses. One of the great strengths of a large church is, somebody whose life just feels like it fell apart last week and they want to go to church, but they kind of want to come in an anonymous way.
Sure.
A very large gathering feels safer for them to come to. Not because they feel threatened, but because they just emotionally don't want to engage.
Sure. Someone shows up at Church 100, it's beyond what I call the anonymity barrier. Everybody knows when you walk into a church of 50 that you're new. Nobody knows at Mariners if you're new.
Right. So it feels safe. So that's a great strength for someone whose life's fallen apart, someone whose wife just got diagnosed with cancer, someone who's having all kinds of drama.
You can dip your toe in.
I can come, I can hear a message.
Yeah.
It's a great strength. A great weakness of a large church, or a great weakness of a church our size, is that people can stay anonymous.
Right.
And
they can hide. So we want them to come heal, but we don't want them to stay forever and hide.
No. And so we have to, because we want to shepherd people, we must have processes that nudge people.
And is that the sheep strategy?
Yes.
You're shepherding people, and so Mariners, it would be, you come to the service, which is in itself just has a gravitational pull because it's a large church. I just spoke to a group of 5K group, whatever, that's a group of pastors and their churches around that. I said, you have a gravitational pull that if you just don't do dumb things, still draws people in. But you have to have a strategy to move them
totally
into that sense of community. So that's the sheep strategy. And a church of 200 needs to have a sheep strategy to say, what's the next step for a person who comes and visits?
I think you do need a sheep strategy, even at that size church, for sure.
Okay. So then, what then are some of the key strategic plans that you would say that? And again, let's stay on the smaller size of the church because that's for everybody. But one of them is that first-time guest.
Yeah.
Clearly, I got to have a strategic plan for that.
Yeah.
Okay? And it could be at a church of 100 people. It could be send them a letter, somebody call them next week, send them another letter, send them an invite to a special event.
I'd say start exactly with that, and then monitor it, and say, you know what, let's try this action instead of this action, and you keep tweaking.
It's important though, because I think it might be hard to say, but a whole lot of pastors don't think that way. So sometimes when I'm doing a church revitalization seminar, and I say, I put it on the screen, here's 5 ways to contact somebody after they visit. Some people, it's the biggest news that they've ever seen.
And I think it's awesome it's the biggest news, because if they take a picture of that thing, of that slide, and they go home and do something, it will make an impact.
It really does. And they see it and they feel it.
Totally. Yeah. It's huge. Lyle Shower, old school.
Yeah, Lyle Shower. Wow, that's old school.
Come on, man. I'm a church nerd. I've been in the game for a while.
Dude, but Lyle Shower, he's famous in that space.
Yeah. But I think he said that only 10% of church leaders are strategic.
Okay, I can see
So
that.
if you aren't,
But does that mean hopelessness for the 90%, or they can adopt some strategic
I don't think it is.
process?
Because I think you can get some strategic people around you, and you would say, hey, these 6 people I want us to care for. I just threw out the number 6.
Yeah.
I think we might have 6 really strong intentional processes. So
Tell me, what are the 6? Don't tease me. What are the 6 intentional processes?
The guest.
Okay.
The new believer.
Yep.
Someone who signs up for a group.
Right, a small group kind of
Small
setting.
group
Could,
or rooted, or
Yeah,
some type of next step,
right.
right? Someone who signs up to serve.
Yeah.
Someone who goes on some type of outreach, and someone who gives for the first time.
So those are 6 kind of strategic plans.
I think
And I think a church of 200 could have those things.
just-
It might just be like a sheet of paper
It doesn't have to
that
be
a
complex.
volunteer coordinates.
the reason those 6, and I'm sure there'll be some pastors who say, yeah, but what about this? What about when someone commits to having a devotional?
Right.
Awesome.
Right,
Then
sure.
Number 7. The reason we have those 6 currently is those are really critical moments in somebody's life.
Yeah, that's good.
When somebody becomes a believer,
Right.
when somebody shows up at church,
You got to know what you're doing next.
We should know.
Well, you say, well,
We
it's
should
just
know.
baptism. But at the same time, my friend Dan Morgan from years ago, he's with the Lord now, he said that people come to Christ, or adults in particular, have usually had some sort of big life problem, like something has
Yes.
gone wrong in their life. So they need relational stability,
Yep.
they need spiritual stability, they need functional stability. Sometimes they're struggling with an addiction or something. And if you don't have any process to help them, you're going to lose them.
Man, Jesus compares our rebirth to being born again.
Yeah.
Our becoming a Christian to being born again. When I was born, a nurse whisked me away, did all kinds of tests, wrapped me in a cloth.
A swaddling cloth, put you in a manger.
No, but cared for me.
Yeah.
Right? Cared how I was
Right.
treated. We have people who are born again in our presence. We should know how we're going to care for them.
Yeah.
And
Even if it's 5 bullet points on a sheet of paper. So I would say that a church of 200, let's even go small, church of 100, you're probably a solo pastor, maybe with a part-time pastoral team and some volunteers, to just say, I want us to do this when someone comes to Christ. I want us to do this when someone visits our church. That's strategic level that everyone should have. At our level, probably all 6 of those things have a staff member or multiple staff members.
so that at that church, you have it. I agree with you. You have it on a piece of paper so that more people can be involved in
Right.
doing
And a piece of paper that you type in an email and you send it to the volunteers.
And this is going to be, hopefully I haven't put a burden on anybody yet, but I'm about to make a strong statement.
Okay.
The Stetzer Church Leaders Podcast is part of the Church Leaders Podcast Network, which is dedicated to resourcing church leaders in order to help them face the complexities of ministry today. The Church Leaders Podcast Network supports pastors and ministry leaders by challenging assumptions, by providing insights, and offering practical advice and solutions and steps that will help church leaders navigate the variety of cultures and contexts that we're serving in. Learn more at ChurchLeaders.com/podcast network.
Because I believe God cares about the people who He saves being shepherded.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons that there are lots of churches across our country where nobody meets Jesus is because the leaders don't know what they would do with people when they met Jesus. They're not prepared to care for people, to shepherd people. And so yes, you don't have to have a complex system, but you should know, here's what we're going to do when somebody becomes a Christian, so that we can disciple the person. We're not just trying to get someone to sign a card. We want people to be cared for.
Okay, good. All right, so then we're talking about those. You had 6, for example, 6. What is it? Strategic processes? Is that the language you use?
We say it's an intentional process for sheep.
Okay.
There's the flock strategy and the sheep strategy.
Okay. And then there are 6 in this case, 6
Yep.
sheep strategy processes that sort of go from
6
there
processes,
as well.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So then, and those all have cycles of planning to them that can be really complicated. So back to where we started. So we go to the pastor's gathering.
We're talking about a lot of stuff, man.
I know. We're covering a lot of stuff.
But we're covering everything from values to mission to
in a lot. Well, again, and this is
following up on a
where
new guest.
this is where I'd say with the course that we're doing with Right Now Pastors Plus. So again, it's rightnowpastorsplus.org. You go through a lot of this stuff.
Actually, that one's about leadership development.
Yeah, leadership development, which is one of the processes, and then we'll do future things as well. Okay, so that being said, let's come now to the teaching plan. So this is the thing that kind of lit up my social media when I posted about it. So how does that fit into strategic planning? And again, we both have one in our hand, but
Yeah.
most people listen to this. They don't watch this. So, but the teaching plan, You have in the summertime, you take some time for your study break.
Study break.
Not everyone can do that, but everyone can develop a teaching plan. Why do you think it's important? What do you do? How do you do it? Tell us about it.
To me, it's important for 3 reasons. I've thought a lot about why I do it, because it's hard to do.
Yeah. I was surprised. Like I know I know the verse and the title that I'm preaching this fall. I mean, fall 2025, and we're in 2024.
Yeah, so
you've already assigned to me.
You know the week, the verse, the title, and like a 4 or 5 sentence summary of what we want accomplished.
So, and you do that to all the teaching pastors, kind of lay that out. So we're slotted in. So I don't know anybody who, and again, it might intimidate people, but I want you to talk about why that level of detail and precision that far ahead. I had a couple people, because it kind of blew up on social media. Well, what if the Holy Spirit moves
I love
differently?
That.
Yeah,
I love that question.
Okay, so talk to us about all that.
Okay, so I got to theologically answer that because I'm gonna be bothered if I don't.
Okay, good, do it.
And then I'll say the benefits. Yeah. So, does the Holy Spirit have the right to edit this? Absolutely, full submission to the Spirit. But we also believe the Spirit of God exists outside of time. We have a triune God who's eternal, Father, Son, and Spirit, who've been in an eternal relationship with each other forever, and they together as one exist outside of time, which means, according to my systematic theologian textbooks I've read, which I agree with, that God sees this moment with the same vividness and clarity that he sees the moment I'm going to be teaching, or you're going to be teaching that message a year from now.
Yeah.
So
a year from now.
So he can sees that moment though with the same clarity and vividness that he sees this moment.
Yep.
So he can lead us in this moment for that moment because he sees it all.
Yeah.
He sees it all equally together. So I think sometimes when someone says it's unspiritual to prepare, as if I have a low view of God.
Right.
I think they have a low view of God.
Sure.
I have a high view of God that he exists outside of time.
I can tell I'm
a little bothered by that.
Get
a little.
And I would say too, if a 9/11 were to happen, there's ability to adjust.
Or a pandemic, which we adjusted the whole year.
Sure, yeah, exactly. So there's ability to adjust. But why then this level of clarity, and how does it serve the leadership of the church well?
Okay. I think it's best for me, it's best for our staff, and best for our church. One, and I'd say not every leader is how I am, and that's why I've had friends say, "Man, I could never do it. It wouldn't work for me." They feel like they need a little bit of the pressure the week of.
Interesting.
I don't do well with it.
Right.
I try to hack my life to get that pressure out of my life. Mm-hmm. I'm not at my best if I wake up on Monday with a blank sheet of paper.
Okay.
I'm at my best if I wake up on Monday with a sense of where I'm going with the teaching
so that
for the coming
fits
weekend.
Part of you're a remarkably organized individual, and this fits that.
It even helps me in my sermon prep because I know what I'm teaching with clarity a month out. I'm able to see illustrations in real life.
Yeah.
Something happens in the Olympics. I'm like, oh, that's going to be an illustration here.
Right.
Because I know what I'm teaching.
Right. And that is a gift, because if you know what you're doing 8 weeks from now and you see an illustration, you can tie that in.
You see them all the time.
Right. Because you will not see them if you don't know what you're preaching.
You can't see them.
Right.
But life offers you tons of illustrations if you know where you're going. So, but that's selfish. It's best for me. But I would do it even if it was just for that.
Okay.
Because it lowers the overwhelmness of Monday if I have a sense.
Right.
It's best for the team. For example, when we plan child dedications or baptism weekends or rooted celebration weekends or a weekend where we're going to promote rooted, our team is able to look at my teaching calendar and say, this is the message where we should put this in.
And it actually, in some cases, there's little notations of that week that it is that thing, that it's rooted weekend.
Because I've already met with the team before I pass this out, and we put some of those things.
So I have it in my hand here, and so like EP and IB and GP, what do those mean?
EP is extended prayer.
So it's extended prayer that follows the service. IB?
I believe it's where we call people to
trust in Christ.
To faith.
And GP?
Giving push.
Giving push. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm bringing it all out to cover. So you have.
We might need a better acronym.
Yeah, but no, that's important. I think it's important to bring those things. OR.
Outreach weekend.
Outreach weekend. So these are all things that are tied in, and your sermons kind of line up with those. Because people, again, the year may intimidate some people. Actually, it's not even a year. I mean, this is 2025, so it's 18 months out.
It's 18 months out, but it's a 12-month plan.
Yeah, 12-month plan. So, but people could do a quarterly plan. You could do a 6-month plan. So tell me more about benefits, because you mentioned the staff benefits.
Oh, the staff benefit is they're able to align things that they care about to the teaching plan. What I tell the staff frequently is there's so much energy that is created from our weekend services. Your ministry will be more fruitful if you attach to energy that's already created instead of trying to create something over on the side. Mm-hmm. So that means just strategically looking at what your ministry is doing and seeing places to attach to our teaching calendar.
So that makes sense. That gives the staff freedom. And I knew, like, Dad Fest is on here. Expo, that's our ministry expo. People get involved. Okay, so you plan those things out.
Yes.
Okay. So you lay this out and it helps the staff. How does it help the congregation? Because they don't see this.
No, but they see the fruit of it.
Right, for sure.
It helps the congregation because we have a staff that's more aligned. Mm-hmm. You have a senior pastor that is healthier.
Right, sure.
You have a teaching plan that's been really well thought out of how we're going to feed you spiritually. There's a lot of work that goes into how. I mean, my wife was a school teacher. You know, the school teachers
have kind of a lesson plan.
School teacher have teaching plans.
Yeah.
I mean, what if third grade elementary teachers woke up on Monday and decided, what am I going to teach the kids this week?
Right.
They are like, there's objectives and goals that we're accountable for these children to learn these things. So for the sake of our church, I feel it's a balanced diet.
You frame out what you want to do, hit major themes. And
so
issues.
we think about there's 8 sermon series this next year, and there's some that are life application.
Right. Mostly, I would say some expository through books of the Bible.
Yeah, there's 3 books of the Bible in there.
Right, and then
some theology.
And we do the On the Table, which has become kind of a staple for us, is the hard issues in January. Don't clarity is kindness. Let's tell what we believe, put it on the table.
We said to be clear is to serve your people well.
Yeah. Okay, so when I bring a group of students to you, and you come talk to some of my cohorts that we do, so someone's going to ask a question, and they're going to say, well, Eric, what would you suggest I do to start to have this level of planning and clarity with my teaching and preaching? Because I'm guessing a 2025 plan that's done in summer 2024 is not going to be doable for them. Where could I start with this, Eric?
I think what you said is wise. You know, a couple months out, would it be fruitful for you to get away once every 6 months or 3 times a year for 2 days? And map, further out in terms of your next 2 or 3 series. Would that be helpful? And again, you're not planning the sermon.
Right.
You're planning the passage, the topic, and a bit of here's a summary of what I'm going to pray happens in people's lives.
Super. Okay, so maybe last kind of question for a couple of quick things. So, what are some common mistakes people make when it comes to their planning processes, their strategic plan, whatever else it may be?
Strategy being disconnected from mission.
Okay.
So you're having strategic things that really don't add any value. That's one. Having strategies for the least important things and not the most important things. I mean, a strategy takes time to develop. Have strategy around the absolute essentials for your ministry.
Which you say that, but that's often where people don't have the strategy. In other words, someone comes to Christ, let's just see what happens.
Dude, we literally have strategies in some churches for how to book a room, but not strategies for how to follow up on a new Christian. Come on, guys.
Yeah. All right. Last question. What do you think happens to a pastor and a church leader when they be more strategic, the vision, values, mission, and strategy plans? What have you seen happen when that strategy takes a higher level and they begin to function at that level? Because people, we might say 10% do, but when they do, what do you see happen?
So this is where I hope pastors who are thinking, man, I did not get in. I became a pastor to shepherd people, not to set strategy.
And people say that, and I love them when they say, because I want them to think that way.
Of course, that's so beautiful.
Right.
But if you have effective strategies, you're freed up to shepherd. Here's just an illustration from the marketplace, and this would be in the micro strategy, not a broad strategy, but like very minutia of strategy, but how important it is. So Atul Gawande, he wrote the book. He's at Harvard. He wrote the book, The Checklist Manifesto. Yeah. So he would go to doctors and say, I'm telling you, you'll lower post-surgery infections and illnesses if you have a checklist. And he said that often they would say, I didn't get into this for a checklist. Right. So like a pastor saying, I didn't get into this for a strategy. Right. I'm a professional. And someone would even say, I don't need a checklist. That's so minutia. I'm a high level thinker.
High level. Yeah.
I don't need that. And he believed, no, it's because you operate at a high level that you need that. Actually have a checklist for the standard things so that all of your energy could be given towards what you became a doctor for in the first place. So it's either 6 or 7 hospitals that he tested this for a period of time. He got these hospitals to agree to implement a checklist. And he was right. All post-surgery infections went down, people being healthier, all of the things that he thought would happen, his hypothesis turned to be true. And doctors found out, wow, actually having a micro strategy frees me up to do what I'm supposed to be doing. So that's what I would say to pastors. I'm glad you didn't get into this for the strategy. I'm glad you're into this for the shepherding. But having some strategies will free you up and your team and your people, because I'm believing that you believe that every believer in your church is a priest, royal priesthood. Every believer in your church has a gift. You want them to be freed up to serve too. So having strategies actually helps liberate people for shepherding.
Eric Geiger, looking forward to the course you're doing is Designed to Lead.
Yes.
You'll use that title, right?
It's a book that Kevin Peck and I wrote.
Yeah. And it'll be at right now, pastorsplus.org, that people can get information beforehand as well. Thanks for taking the time to be
Absolutely, man.
On the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You've been hearing from Eric Geiger. Be sure to check out his course, Design to Lead, on rightnowpastorsplus.org. You can learn more about Eric at theological.com and find his podcast at ChurchLeaders.com/podcast network. And thanks again for listening to the Stetzer Church Leaders Podcast. You can find more interviews as well as other great content for ministry leaders at ChurchLeaders.com/podcast. And again, if you found a conversation helpful today, love for you to take a few moments to leave us a review that'll help other ministry leaders find us and benefit from our content. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.
You've been listening to the Stetzer Church Leaders Podcast. For more great interviews, as well as articles, videos, and free resources, visit our website at ChurchLeaders.com. Thanks for listening.